Alrighty.
All right, everybody. We'll give everyone a few minutes to join before we start, because it's just now 2 o'clock.
Eastern.
Yes, Eastern.
Yeah.
My bad. It's 1 o'clock Tom's time.
I know the East Coast tends to forget about the rest of the country.
We don't necessarily forget. We just expect you guys to accommodate us. That's all.
I know. I'm fully aware of the East Coast bias. But yeah, with just a couple more minutes, and then we'll introduce Jack and we'll get going.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's a fair amount of time.
That's what I was just thinking myself, Tom. So I think it's safe to get started, and we've got a lot of information to cover and want to be respectful of everyone's time. So the TSC team would like to thank everybody for joining us today, especially when we know there are a lot of St. Patty's Day and March Madness activities vying for your attention this afternoon. So we are going to be sharing information on CloudOCR, and our team would like to welcome Jack Shales to provide you with a high-level overview of the solution. As we move through the presentation, if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat window, and we'll address throughout the discussion and make this as interactive as possible. So Jack, thank you for being here today, and the audience is now yours.
Yeah, thank you very much as well to the whole TSC team, Jody and Tom. And I know Heather couldn't be with us today, but she was also great in the lead up here. I'm really excited to talk today about CloudOCR and how it can kind of take your solutions to the next level. So today we are going to discuss automated data capture with Onbase, and of course the main technology that we're focusing on today is CloudOCR. So we're going to cover kind of 4 basic sections. First, we're going to kind of just set the stage a little bit with examining some, common problems across accounts payable departments specifically. But when you think about, any high volume kind of document processing where you are kind of currently manually indexing, or maybe you have some form of capture that you want to streamline and make more efficient. Then we're going to kind of take a look at the OCR technology specifically, look at kind of where we came from, look at kind of where we're going, and why CloudOCR kind of fits into the best of breed technologies. Then we're going to look specifically at the CloudOCR technology. We'll take a look at what the kind of user interface looks like and what to expect out of the user experience. And we'll also have a small look at the purpose-built Onbase integration. And again, just a high-level overview of how this can work for you and get you feeling comfortable about how CloudOCR can provide kind of the next step in streamlining your document processing. So first, as an introduction here, this is based on a study from the Institute of Finance and Management. And basically, it was looking at several different organizations, accounts payable departments, and looking at their top priorities as an organization. So, what are the biggest AP priorities when it comes to, companies nationwide here? And the top answers were ensuring productivity. getting invoices paid on time, dealing with paper, mitigating risk, and reporting and analytics. So number one, a lot of these things, being productive, getting things paid on time, identifying exceptions, and all of these types of things, you know, if you come from the Onbase world, you already understand how Onbase is helping you with that. But, you know, you may or may not have gone through several different capture technologies already. You may have tried Onbase's advanced capture, you know, to try to automate things in the past and found some limitations there. You might have investigated some other technologies to try to minimize dealing with paper, to get things indexed more quickly and get things paid on time. You know, of course, a lot of times the technology that we hope is going to solve these problems can lead to certain other delays. So, you know, we run into organizations that have tried things in the past. They've tried certain capture technologies and they just end up ripping it out and going back to the manual process because they found there's so much kind of extra manual effort that's associated with setting up these technologies. And so, you know, again, the point is we want to pay things on time. We want to be productive. We want to get rid of that paper. We want to reduce risk, and we want to be able to have visibility into all of that data. So when we talk about, you know, things that have happened in the last couple of years, obviously there was a big movement of workers going from the office to working from home. Now, a lot of these workers may be coming back into the office, but a lot of, you know, that workforce is going to remain at home. A lot of organizations have been made aware by things like COVID that we need to prepare for situations in which, you know, we need to be productive even if people are at the office or they are at home. So the things that have been impacted most by more people working from home is things like the receiving of the actual invoices. They used to come into the office in that centralized location. You know, now that people are at home, that is something that's heavily affected. The payment processing itself, approval workflows, especially if you're used to that office environment, you know, those approval workflows often could be handled with, you know, just shouting down the hallway and things like that. Of course, that's not the case anymore. Things like resolving exceptions, and of course, down at the bottom, invoice data capture itself has been affected by working from home. So a lot of these buckets of things, especially those resolving of exceptions and those approvals, you know, you're already aware of what Onbase can provide in those directions, but the capture side is also really crucial to kind of nipping these in the bud ahead of time, getting the data captured accurately right from the get-go, and dealing with the exceptions after the fact, but knowing that you have captured the data that's coming in on that paper invoice accurately. Basically, you can save over 50% of the time that you spend correcting an invoice by going with something like CloudOCR, which is that best of breed data capture technology. And when we talk about saving that time, you know, this is not to eliminate people out of the equation. Really what we're talking about here is if you're spending half of your day going in and manually entering an invoice number, an invoice date, manually entering a total amount that relates to that invoice, that is time that could be better spent on other things, right? We don't want to spend the majority of our time correcting data that came in on an invoice. We don't want to necessarily be, you know, looking at a piece of paper in one hand, looking at the computer, and just taking information from the page and directly entering it into the system. You know, we want to be able to automatically recognize that crucial data that's coming in on the invoices is actually an existing purchase order, for example. We want to be able to automatically identify if things are duplicates. And basically that manual time, whether it's putting separator sheets before you're scanning in invoices, or, you know, really any part of this process where there is any of that double entry going on, just think of all of the extra things that you could be doing with that time if you're not having to do all these manual tasks. It's going to give you more time for things like actually analyzing the data, not just correcting the data, but looking for patterns, looking at the larger trends. Engaging in more stakeholder collaboration across the organization, making sure that you're unified and finding the path forward as a unit. Being able to manage your suppliers and, negotiate for better discounts, because you're not just sitting there entering the data, you're able to actually get a picture of kind of those larger trends, and you can clean up that vendor master data, which is critical to automating all of this information going through your Onbase workflow and things like that. So now let's take a look at kind of where OCR and capture and these things that we're going to talk about are going to fit into this process. So when we think about, the overall procure to pay process, the accounts payable process, we think of this in kind of two stages here. First of all, if you're purchase order based, there is a process of actually generating that purchase order. That can go through some sort of a PO requisition process. Maybe you've already built that out in Onbase or in another technology. Maybe that goes through an approval process and then that purchase order is generated. So then after the purchase order gets generated and we start receiving those invoices, or in the non-PO, space, if we're just receiving utility bills and that sort of thing, then, think about what happens today when those invoices are coming in. If they're coming in paper and digital format, both, what does that look like? Are we going into that email inbox? Are we printing out invoices only to kind of rescan them into the system? Are we doing things, like clicking and dragging things from that email inbox out to a network share? Do we have any level of automation, or are we just taking paper invoices, whether they start from paper or whether we're printing them, and just running over to the computer and manually entering in those fields? So today we're really going to focus on what we can do in the invoice capture portion and the indexing portion to automate that and give you the best chance of success when we pass it into the Onbase workflow. So again, those lower left-hand corner, the invoice capture box and the indexing portion, that's really what we're going to address with CloudOCR and what you're trying to address with any of these automated capture and indexing technologies. Now, when we talk about a data capture solution or an OCR solution, I like to think of this in kind of two different classes. First, we had the older technologies, the old school technologies that came from a place that was very template based. So you might be used to something like Onbase's advanced capture. And if you're familiar with that technology, basically what you did is for every structured document that you had to go in and basically create zones where we're expecting to find certain values every single time. So what that means is that I would draw a box to say, for this invoice, I'm always expecting the date to be in the top right-hand corner in this box. I'm always expecting the total to be down in the bottom corner, in this box here. I'm expecting that the PO number is going to be over here. So the problem with these solutions is that basically if there was an incorrect scan that didn't get auto skewed correctly, if something was just a few pixels off, or maybe the vendor changed the way that they do their invoicing, maybe they changed the structure, maybe the line items have pushed everything out to another page. So even though we were expecting a total in the bottom right-hand corner, it turns out that now, since we've got 3 pages, it's on that last page. So in effect, what this caused was the need to produce multiple templates per style of invoice and maybe even multiple per vendor just to maintain this type of a solution. If a vendor gets added or if a vendor changes something, then we're going back and we're editing those templates. This became very laborious. And this meant that we were spending, up to, 2 to 4 hours just to create a single template and having dozens of these templates in our system. So those older technologies are great for documents that never ever change their structure, and you can have a lot of success with those older technologies if that's the case. The problem is when we're dealing with things like invoices that are so different from each other, from vendor to vendor, or even within a vendor, they can be different. You need something more responsive and dynamic. So luckily, within the last 5 to 10 years, newer school technologies have come out that include things like machine learning, neural networks, AI. And these newer technologies are not as bound to those templates, meaning that instead of saying, I'm always expecting an invoice number to be in this location on the page, I'm saying, I want to capture an invoice number, I want to capture a date, I want to capture the total amount. And then basically with these newer technologies, we just start running documents through and kind of pointing out to the system where these things are located. So, the first time it comes through, it might get a date, but if it doesn't, I point and I say, hey, this is where the date is. This is where that total amount is. And these newer technologies learn over time. So, basically, with both of these technologies, they are trying to reduce that manual effort up front, and they both do a pretty good job in specific cases. The problem really with both of these is even though both the newer school and the older school technologies can reduce manual indexing, simplify the invoice capture process, and they can save you time, they can also add time because of all the things that you don't think about. All we're thinking about is reducing that manual indexing, but we're not thinking about all of that extra time spent building those templates in the old school version. In the newer school technologies, we're not thinking about all of that care and feeding that goes into kind of constantly improving that machine learning technology, standing up the servers, doing patches on the database, upgrading the software, and having to just manage a whole other technology that within itself can take a certain level of expertise and possibly a specialized person on your staff just to be able to kind of host that technology and make sure that everything is running up to its highest potential. We'll talk about how CloudOCR kind of takes the best parts of these technologies and then it eliminates a lot of the issues with these, with all of that extra maintenance that typically goes into these solutions. But before we look specifically at that, I do just want to point out another study here, and this was looking at companies that are currently using some sort of electronic payable technology. So companies that are already going through some level of invoice automation, invoice processing automation. And you can see here that even the average company that is already trying to do their due diligence is spending over $10 per invoice just to take it from the point of capture all the way to paying it. The best in class companies are still paying above $2 per invoice, which is really actually great. And basically with CloudOCR, with the technologies that TSC can provide, especially with the power of Onbase and CloudOCR working together, we want to get you in that best in class category, essentially, where you're paying well under the average, basically, 5 times less than that average number. So let's look at capture and indexing now with CloudOCR. In my time looking at all of the OCR technologies that are out there in the marketplace, I firmly believe that CloudOCR is the easiest way to capture data. And again, it comes back to taking the best parts of that new school technology with that machine learning and taking out the things that you don't want to be doing with your time. So, what am I talking about there? Well, when you are standing up a new OCR software, typically that means setting up servers. That means requisitioning certain, infrastructure and deploying it. And as anybody knows, even a simple IT project can sometimes take months. In this case, you can actually sign up with CloudOCR and begin sending things through the same day and getting, you know, at least a text file back to show you the results that you would get from CloudOCR. CloudOCR is already running in the cloud. It's already processing documents for customers, and it's incredibly easy to integrate. Basically, with the system that's already up and running, we're able to get you stood up and essentially have a connection up into CloudOCR through email or through direct scan or a network share, you know, very quickly. It's very easy to integrate, and since we're talking specifically about CloudOCR with Onbase, just know that there is a purpose-built CloudOCR to Onbase integration that works at the API level. So, you know, basically the minute that it gets done in CloudOCR, it'll get fed back into Onbase, and it can be right there sitting, waiting for you in your workflow. CloudOCR is easy to use because, again, you're not going to have to do all of those other things that you would typically have to do when you purchase an OCR technology, like go in and, you know, create the fields, adjust document types, adjust permissions, make sure that documents are flowing through, do troubleshooting, possibly have, you know, different support tickets with issues in the software. So you don't have to worry about that at all. You just put your invoices in a folder or set up auto forwarding, or, you know, have us download your emails to that network location where we're going to encrypt your documents and send them up to CloudOCR. And then the next time you see them, they're already going to be sitting in that Onbase workflow. You know, and not getting too much into, you know, anything with pricing today, but essentially this is one of the few technologies that you have a chance for kind of a limited trial before you have a long-term commitment. Some of the benefits of CloudOCR, and a few of these I've already been talking about, but basically, you know, number one, we're going to be able to automatically take in your email attachments for processing. So whether that's auto forwarding or setting up an email download, you're going to be able to allow vendors to send you invoices into an inbox, and then those can automatically pass through into CloudOCR without you needing to do any extra action. We're going to be able to automatically classify documents as they come into CloudOCR, and what that means is that if you're currently, you know, stacking papers at a scanner to scan them into the system, and you're putting separator sheets in, or you're scanning them in one at a time, with CloudOCR, you can actually just put those papers at the scanner, let them go, and let us separate them up in CloudOCR. That is part of the service. So whether you're separating everything perfectly, or whether you just send us a big file full of 100 different invoices in one go, we're going to be able to separate those at the point of capture into individual invoices, and you don't need to waste the time doing that yourself. Then things are going to go into a best-in-class data extraction engine, and I can say best-in-class because there's kind of a secret sauce that is very unusual, and it really pushes CloudOCR above what other technologies are doing currently. I'll talk about that a little on the next slide. We're going to be able to get incredibly accurate data with CloudOCR, which is going to make it very easy to automatically determine any errors with an ERP connection once we do hit Onbase and you're in the hands of your friends at TSC. We're going to be able to basically have any kind of distributed or centralized capture environment that you would like to set up, because this is so flexible. So whether you are in the office all together, or whether everybody is at their own house and they have a multifunctional device on their desk, any of those setups will work with getting things into CloudOCR, and you can even have people in the field use their phones to send things into CloudOCR. The whole point of all of this is we want to basically give you as much time as possible to, again, save money, get discounts, negotiate better deals, and all those things that we talked about earlier. Now, here is a look at everything that is going to happen to all of these invoices when they come into CloudOCR, and basically all of this is going to be unattended for you. So we receive the emails or the files that are scanned, or however those files are getting into CloudOCR. Basically, any option is on the table. And then we immediately put them through that classification process. Remember, that's where we're automatically separating anything that is merged together, and the opposite case as well. If you get a vendor that sends you individual pages that are supposed to be one document, we can merge them in that step as well. Then we're going through that index extraction process, and that one is automated. So the machine learning of CloudOCR is going to try to automatically index as much as it can based on all that it knows about invoices and how to find, PO numbers and how to find invoice numbers and the total amount and things like that. Now, for most of those newer school technologies, that is sort of where you would jump in and have to kind of correct and verify any results. You'd have to kind of teach that machine learning, possibly make some adjustments in the software to handle things better next time. But this is where CloudOCR comes in and makes it really easy for you, because we do have a human verification step immediately after that index extraction process, where we are actually looking at the document and verifying that everything has been captured correctly. And a reason for this and why we don't just let things run through there, and here's an example, is we have an invoice that's coming in and we get to the line where it's trying to capture the PO number, but instead it captured the PO box. So this is something that the CloudOCR professional will recognize. They will basically point it to the correct PO number. When they do that, they're actually teaching the system to pick up that PO number instead of the PO box the next time it comes in. So the next time that invoice comes into CloudOCR, it's probably going to automatically get the correct PO number, but that CloudOCR professional had to correct it that first time that it came in. And so that's really what they're there to do. They're there to optimize everything that is going through that index extraction process and correct it. And not only that, but there are going to be cases where some critical piece of business information is written on an invoice by hand, or maybe there is something that makes it hard to read in the OCR process. So when the OCR fails and we have a human looking at it and they can read it with their eye, even though it failed capture, they are going to type that value in. So that's going to push our capture rates. Basically, with a standard kind of new school deployment that's fully fledged and you put a lot of volume through it, you're still only getting really 90 to 95% pass through, because there are those minor corrections that have to be made from time to time. But with this process, with CloudOCR, with the CloudOCR professionals and that correction process, we're seeing capture rates in the neighborhood of 98, 99%, pushing it well above what the technology can do on its own, which is why this is truly the best in class data capture process out there. Okay, so after that CloudOCR professional runs that verification, anything that is corrected by them is going to get aggregated to that machine learning database, and then the document and all of that data is going to pass straight into Onbase at the API level as keywords and follow your normal workflow processing. So what does this look like? Basically, since this is so hands-off, there is not a user interface for you to go into to actually correct anything on these documents, because that's all being handled by CloudOCR, but there is visibility into what's going on through the CloudOCR portal. So, if you sign up for CloudOCR and you start running documents through, basically, if you had a question, if you wanted to check on a specific batch that you uploaded, or if you just wanted to see, some of your reporting statistics, you can go to the special TSC CloudOCR portal, log in, and basically the first thing that you're going to see on the website is all of your processing statistics. How many files have you processed, how many have you uploaded, and it'll actually keep track of your licensing. So how many licenses do you have left, how many documents have I uploaded and how many of those have been, processed? Are some of them in the OCR process right now? This one has been sitting in this status for, over 24 hours, that sort of thing. And then you can see right there, there's that button to create a new support ticket when you come to this page. So if you identify something in this reporting mechanism, and then you want to ask a question to the CloudOCR team about why this was captured that way, or in the future we want this captured differently, then you do have that ability to communicate. Opening up that kind of side panel, you can see that there's just a few functions like looking at your list of vendors. Part of what we do in CloudOCR is identifying vendors and assigning the correct vendor ID number in the OCR itself. And so there is a process for getting your vendor information, and basically that's a way that you can kind of verify that that got transmitted successfully. There's a way to add approved users, so that if you maybe are an admin of CloudOCR, but you want a couple of other people to be able to come in, do reporting, and create support tickets, like I said, you can view those licenses. And then the settings is really where you're dictating how you want your invoices to be captured, and TSC and CloudOCR team will help you with that initial setup, of course. The secure management is a section where you can download the most up-to-date version of our secure management tool that kind of encrypts things from a network share and sends them to CloudOCR. And then we also have a questionnaire which asks very common questions, so that the first week or two that we're processing your invoices, once it gets to that human verification step, that person might have a question, and anything we can get out of the way early, we want to put in there. And then of course, if our questions get answered over time, that's something that we can add to, so that that's kind of a living document of quick help that our team can get to when they have questions, so that they don't have to bother you directly. Just to look at a few of these pages, here's that vendor list. So you can see some of the vendors down below. So I can come in here and confirm that everything got uploaded successfully. You can also see that there's only 2 exceptions really that can come from the CloudOCR side. In one case, maybe a brand new vendor just invoiced you for the first time and haven't made it into your vendor file yet. So in that case, that no vendor exists, and that's kind of how it'll be identified in Onbase. You can filter it right into a missing vendor queue and things like that. And then this cannot be processed basically means, hey, this is really fuzzy. We can't even read it with the human eye, or maybe it's a pizza menu. We don't think that this is actually an invoice that we want to process. This is a look at the settings where I'm saying, what language I want to capture in. We do support multiple languages. What file type do I want back? Do I want a PDF or a TIFF image, and things like that. Since the majority of you will most likely be taking this into Onbase, we will, and the TSC team will give you kind of the best practices, so we don't just kind of drop you in and let you figure this out yourselves. This will be sort of an assisted process. And then this is what that questionnaire looks like. Basically, the idea is if there's any cases where, and here's a couple of examples. Example number 1, you have a vendor that, way back 25 years ago, they were called ABC Company. But now, after going through mergers and acquisitions and whatever, they're called XYZ Corporation on their invoices, but basically in our ERP, they're still ABC Company. So that's something that would go in this questionnaire. So if the first time I get invoiced from XYZ Corporation, I know, okay, that's actually ABC Company. Another example would be, for things like utility bills where you don't have an invoice number, what do you do when you're entering that into the ERP today? Are you entering that with some combination of an account number with a date to create an invoice number? Are you leaving it blank? So what do you want us to do in those cases, and things like that? And the secure management tool, this is what that looks like. Basically, it's just a piece of software that will look into these 4 different folders that you set up. And basically you have an upload folder where you can basically set up a scanner to scan into the upload. Those will all go up to CloudOCR. We're holding backup of anything that you put into that upload folder after it transitions up. When things are completed, they can come back into a download directory, and typically that's where they'll be picked up for Onbase to ingest. And then that vendor file directory is where you'll put vendor information when you want to update your vendor file, and that's something that the TSC team and CloudOCR will help you set up the first time as well, so that we get the most up-to-date vendors possible. You can see also at the bottom, you can set your own polling interval for every minute, every couple minutes, however you want that to be. And we'll make certain best practice recommendations as well of kind of what we've seen is the most successful in terms of the maximum files per batch and things like that. So again, just to kind of review, once we do send things into CloudOCR, they are going through that automatic splitting and classification, the automatic index extraction with the human verification, and then anything that we correct is going and getting aggregated to the machine learning database, so that the system is essentially getting better at processing your invoices as you put more of them in. And then we're just letting it fall right back into the Onbase workflow, ready to go. So if you have an existing Onbase workflow that you're using for your invoice processing, it can basically stay exactly the same today. The difference is, instead of just sitting there and keying it in, you just wait for it to drop in with CloudOCR. Essentially, the rule of thumb at CloudOCR is if we get it in before noon central, we're going to get it back to you fully indexed that day. If we get it after noon central, then it's 24 hours. So we do turn it around quite quickly, and we will work with you if there are any special cases where, for some reason, at the end of November, you have a particularly higher volume than normal. It's just all about communication, and we essentially staff and also add resources to our processing power as needed for those occasions, because sometimes that does happen. Certain institutions have more processing at certain points twice a year, so we respond accordingly. And let's just touch briefly on the Onbase integration part of this. So like I said, there is a purpose-built Onbase integration. So I just want to give a brief look at what that looks like. And if you're used to looking at Onbase Unity forms, this should be very familiar to you. Basically, we just simply set up a connection with a few critical values like your CloudOCR company ID and so on and so forth. And then we're just mapping, what is the CloudOCR profile, what is the Onbase document type, what is the what is the CloudOCR field, what is the Onbase keyword. So basically, you are just taking, the CloudOCR part on the left equals this keyword down here, and going down that list. And you can see that, basically, whether you're taking in that header information, if you do have any line item mapping, this form kind of handles that configuration. And then once you have these configuration forms, essentially there's just this little CloudOCR integration lifecycle that would sit inside your system. If you ever needed to have multiple configurations for different internal companies, you could manage those from here. You can handle that vendor file upload right inside of Onbase instead of having it all come from that secure management tool that I was showing earlier. So, basically your vendor file uploads would all happen from here. We can also catch any duplicates that are created as a part of this process. And essentially what this is going to do is it's going to make it easier for you to send things to CloudOCR and get things back from CloudOCR. So, this is kind of the easiest way to do it with this Onbase lifecycle. Things can basically start in Onbase so that you have that kind of audit trail happening. And then when they go up to CloudOCR and come back, you can have kind of that next version, that next revision, or a brand new document waiting for you when it comes into your existing AP workflow. And then again, you don't need to know all of the details here at the moment, but it'll come with a package of Onbase document types, basically that configuration Unity form. certain data that we're passing back and forth in these JSON files, and then the vendor files that are being uploaded. So just a better way to track everything, to contain different versions, and of course, you know, using Onbase is always better than using Windows files and folders. So just to tie a bow on what we've discussed today, remember, you know, we kind of talked about those common accounts payable issues and working from home and things like that, going into a discussion of the old school versus the new school OCR and why they both kind of have a lot of extra work involved. Then we looked at CloudOCR and how that can alleviate a lot of that extra work that you might not think about when you are considering implementing a capture process. And then looking at that purpose-built Onbase integration. So basically, CloudOCR is ready to go. It's got a lot of satisfied customers and it's growing. Again, we believe that this is by far the easiest capture product that we've ever seen. And it's been very, very popular to have people, you know, not only not doing that manual indexing, but also, you know, not having to focus on maintaining those servers and doing all of that extra care and feeding of the machine learning and things like that. So with that, my portion has come to a conclusion. So thank you so much to the TSC team, and I will hand it back to you.
Great, thanks, Jack. Great information. And just to close this out, for anybody who might be unfamiliar with the term managed services, it's basically just the practice of outsourcing the various services that we've got listed on this slide. Should you think TSC can assist you with any combination of these, please reach out. And Jack, if you want to go to the next slide, because I think you still have control. Okay, so upcoming webinars are listed here. And as always, if there are topics not listed, please let us know what you'd like to hear more about. We are more than happy to, you know, take a look and be collaborative with what the information is that we're presenting and what you are going to find to be the most beneficial for, you know, projects and solutions that you see on your, you know, horizons. But basically just, you know, thank y'all for joining us today. We hope you have a great afternoon and good luck to everybody in their brackets. Hope nobody busted today. So
Thanks, everybody.
see y'all.